there is. Perfect. So just for your peace of mind, the recording will record myself and the screen, and obviously no participants' names or any of you guys. If you do choose to write something in the question and answer function, please go ahead and use that. If I have time at the end of today's session, I will gladly answer any questions or open them up to the group, whatever feels more appropriate. I can't promise I will have that time because the content is, as I say, so vast. However, if with your question you leave me a name as well, when you registered for this, you will have left us an email address. I can always come back to you at a later date. So apologies for that. That's not that we don't want to talk to you or hear from you. It just within the 60 minutes may not allow me as much time as I would like to have. So apologies for that. So this evening's webinar, it's 60 minutes long, and hopefully you already know that it is all about managing behaviours that challenge us. There are a variety of you on tonight. I can tell from some of the sort of introductions that you guys have put in the chat. There are hopefully lots of parents here. You may have a job role that is in a school, you know, working as a teaching assistant or other roles, but there are also maybe some educational staff here today as well. So you are all very welcome this evening. So tonight we're going to be thinking about challenging behaviours that are displayed by children and young people that we either work with or live with. As you listen to the webinar, I invite you to think about what behaviours actually challenge you. You've had a little inkling into that already from that poll question. But one thing that I do want to make really clear is that this evening's webinar is not about blaming or you know, feeling as if we aren't good enough parents. As I've already shared with you, I have two teenage boys myself, and none of this is about saying I know how to parent better than you, or so and so is doing a better job than the next person. So this is about all of us learning here together, hopefully this evening. So today's objectives are to explore behaviour as a form of communication. So rather than looking at it as a you know, the end result of something, it's actually thinking about it being like a message to us, or something that we can take hints from of actually what is going on for the child or young person that is in front of us. And once we've understood this behaviour in kind of the form of a communication, why is that happening? What is actually going on in a developing brain for children and young people, because they haven't quite got to that, you know, that pinnacle of that brain development when we are faced with them. And finally, to understand what it is that challenges us as parents, and to try and think about ways that we can respond as adults to the children and young people in a way that is perhaps slightly more effective than maybe the way that we're dealing with it at the moment. So the webinar is designed to hopefully equip you with tools and some knowledge in order to both help yourselves and the children and young people in your lives. As I've already said, it is meant to be a non-judgmental webinar, so please have an accepting attitude both of other people, if there are things in the chat or the question and answer that you read, but also an accepting attitude of yourselves. We're not here this evening, as I said, to berate ourselves for not being good enough or being perfect. This certainly is not meant to come across in that way. As I've already mentioned, the question and answer function, please feel free to utilise that. I will do my utmost to try and answer them at the end. And if not, without a shadow of a doubt, I will come back to you with the answer that hopefully you're looking for. And as we go through this, have in mind yourselves, the children and young people that are around you as well, and think about the behaviours and recent experiences or incidents that you are aware of, because of course you will know that better than anybody else. Okay, I think I've already made this point kind of clear. So let's get rid of all of that stress about being perfect. We all make mistakes and we all will continue to make those mistakes. We are, after all, human beings. Some things we will get right and other things we will get wrong, sometimes horribly wrong. And other things will be somewhere in between those two things. By recognizing all of the pressures that actually demand our attention on a daily basis, it's time to start thinking about letting yourself and the children and young people that you've got in mind this evening off the hook a bit, so that if we accept ourselves as good enough parents, we're going to be giving ourselves and our children the best chance of actually moving forward in a more productive way. Yes, there's going to be room for improvement in communication style, our parenting skills, but none of us is here today, I hope, because we think we're the perfect parent. And so we're all doing the best that we can, given the skills and the tools that we have. Okay, so before I go much further, I would like to invite you to just spend 2 minutes of our time, and I will keep tabs on that for you, just thinking about what challenges, practical examples you can bring to the forefront of your mind at the moment. So 1 minute to think about, oh, I will. Sorry, just a question there. To go back to this one. I hope that works for you, Fiona. I will move forward in a minute while I explain what I want you to do in that 2 minutes of thinking time. So spend 1 minute thinking about what it might be in recent weeks, or over a period of time, that you find challenging or have found challenging, and then spend another minute thinking about a child or young person in your lives and the things that they might find challenging. That one's a bit tricky because you're kind of putting yourself in their shoes, if you like. But yeah, do your best. So I'll give you 2 minutes, 1 minute for what challenges you as an adult, and the second minute for what might challenge a young person or child that is in your life at the moment. Natalie, I think video and sound is automatically off, given that it's a webinar. I can't hear you or see you, if that helps. Okay, so if you spent a minute thinking about challenges you face, now please spend a minute thinking about a child or young person. You definitely can, Natalie. Yeah, go ahead and cook. Okay, so if we bring that thinking back into this space here with me, all of us is hopefully coming up with different challenges that we face on a daily basis. There are some things that I think we can probably say are fairly common, as I mentioned earlier in the poll. So a simple flat refusal to do something. Now that might be from something much younger in terms of getting their shoes on, ready to leave the house, or much older, refusing to come out with you when you need to go to the grandparents' house for the weekend, over the weekend, for example. So it can go from one extreme to the other, but a simple no, I'm just not doing it. Where do we go from there? Other challenges that I guess are a bit more universal are things like, how do we manage their fears and their worries? So moving from one educational setting, say primary, into secondary, how do we manage that for them? What can we do around it? And other things that I think might be more common as well, such as teaching certain age-related behaviours, potty training. Who remembers that or is going through it now? When do we teach them to tie their shoelaces and dress themselves independently? So some of these are a little bit more perhaps common. Certainly, I wouldn't call them universal the world over, but certainly in the Western world, all of us will share some of these. others that you may well have come up with, you know, being pulled in lots of different directions, being shouted at by the young people we live with, being rushed around, or refusal, as I already said, you know, kind of time pressures that we have of, okay, well, I've got to get to that football match, but I also need to really finish this presentation, or being interrupted, you know, wait your turn, you know, that kind of, I was in the middle of a conversation. We've all, you know, done that. So yeah, that's a good one. When 3 children are at a swimming pool and, you know, one of them will either not leave the pool or not leave the changing room. What are you going to do with the other 2? Absolutely, you know, nightmare logistically as well as emotionally. That play on our emotions can be massive. Just thinking in terms of the young people that you were thinking of, some of the things that they might find challenging. Now, let's see if you can see any similarities here. Being rushed, being interrupted, not being able to do the things that they feel are important to them. In my household, it's a constant battle of staying up late to watch a particular football match. Apparently, they're all as important as each other, regardless of whether it's a final or some kind of league game. They're all as important as each other. And if you have a 8:15 kickoff, you are going to be in real trouble, because it's a school night and it doesn't sort of finish till 10. Heaven help us if it goes into extra time. Constant negativity. Yes, thank you, Marie. So some of the things, I think the point that I'm trying to make here, not I think, I know, is some of the things that we find challenging as adults, children will find challenging too, those themes of interruption and time management, but they come across very differently. So that is, you know, kind of key to remember as we go through. Parents and children planning something that are opposites of each other, but for the same time. We have a family WhatsApp group off the back of that now, Natalie, where we post things on there that we've already planned for the children to do with us, so they don't make other plans. But yeah, all of these challenges can be quite common with our young people as well, so bear that in mind. Okay, thinking about when it is that we are challenges and when we are challenged, if we imagine a seesaw, so challenges can vary from day to day. They're personal and they are unique to each of us on here tonight. What one person can find challenging might be, you know, a breeze or a walk in the park for the next person. And also what we found challenging last week might be more straightforward for us this week. And it's important to note that the behaviour is only going to be challenging to us because at that precise time, we don't have the resources or the tools or the knowledge to try and work with that challenge. You know, as I said, a behaviour I found challenging last week may be a breeze for me this week because I've had more sleep. Or this week, that same behaviour is more challenging because I've got lots of training to deliver and that's going around and around my mind, as opposed to having that time for my child. So, you know, when we have the resources, we have the knowledge, we have the time, the energy, it's more of a balance. So the demands of the situation and what we have to deal with it, they can balance each other out. And then that's not challenging. But as soon as the demands of the situation outweigh our resources, our patience, our energy level, our confidence in our skills as a parent, then we are out of balance and out of sync. And that's when it becomes more of an issue. Okay, so we have in mind some of the situations that we find challenging. That's a really good starting point for us. Now, what I want us to think about is what's actually happening in our brains and the brains of our children and young people that we are thinking about. I don't know whether any of you will have heard of, it is S Diver, I don't have your first name. This is aimed at parents. You're more than welcome to be here if you think it will be beneficial to you in your role. But if that's not something you're interested in, then yes, feel free to, you know, hop off the call. Apologies if that's been misrepresented to you. So thinking about something that is coined by a chap called Dan Sigal. He's a psychiatrist over at UCLA in America. It's okay. So he has come up with this great idea of why it is that we flip our lids. So I'm going to, fingers crossed, technology will work with us today, and I'm going to show you a video. No, I'm not. Do let me know if you can't hear this, guys.
One of the most rewarding experiences for me has been to study brain science and apply it to the experience of parenting. And the hand model of the brain that I use to teach parents is very useful to understand that. So if you take your thumb and put it in the middle of your palm, put your fingers over the top, this is a very useful model of the brain. And when we can actually see in front of us what's going on in the brain, then we can change what the brain does. So let me walk you through very basically what happens in this brain and the structures in it. And it goes like this. The spinal cord comes up representing the wrist, and then you have coming up into the skull the brain stem and the limbic area, which work together to help regulate arousal and your emotions and the way you have a fight, flight, freeze response. These are below the cortex, the limbic and brainstem areas, and the cortex is this higher part of the brain that allows us to perceive the outside world, to think and reason. And this frontmost part of the brain, right behind your forehead, so the person's oriented like this, is actually the part that regulates the subcortical, limbic, and brainstem areas. This regulation is very important because sometimes we can have all sorts of things happen in our life. We're tired, we're exhausted, someone pushes a particular emotional button, and we can flip our lids. So rather than being tuned in and connected and balanced and flexible, we can lose all of that flexibility, even lose moral reasoning, and act in ways that are terrifying to others, including our children. Now, you can actually bring yourself back online and come back to the high road and make a repair with your child, and that's important to explain to them. And you can also use this hand model of the brain to explain to children, even as young as 5 and 6, how to understand when their emotions are rising up from the brainstem and limbic areas here, and how it's overriding the prefrontal area and making it so they may be about to flip their lids. So I've had kids come tell me that they're about to go flip their lids and they need a break. They need a timeout. And by even just naming that, they can tame it. And that's the power of using the hand model for ourselves and our children to help us all make sense of what goes on in the emotional communication that we have in the course of day-to-day life.
Some long words that are a bit sciencey, but don't worry too much about that. The idea of that is that we all have a lid that we can flip, as well as children and young people that we live with too. Now, as well as having that idea in our minds, I want us to think about our brain being a bit like a house. So you have an upstairs and you have a downstairs. The downstairs represents the brain stem, so the limbic region. This is the bit that is the more primitive bit, the kind of cave people days, if you like, and it's responsible for all of our basic functions. So the fight and flight response, and for our strong emotions like anger and fear. The upstairs brain, part of the house, is made of the cerebral cortex and all of the parts that go with it. They're posh names, we don't need to worry about them too much. The upstairs brain, imagine it as a light-filled library that's full of windows, and it allows you to see things more clearly and more logically. This is where all the intricate processes take place, the thinking, the imagining, the planning. It's also responsible for characteristics such as decision-making, having control over our emotions and our body, things like self-understanding and empathy and you know, all of that morality. So when humans have their when humans are born, they're upstairs. No, sorry, it's because I'm looking at the chat function as well at the same time. What was the downstairs? The downstairs is the bit that deals with fight or flight, and it deals with all of our basic motor kind of movements, everything that we do that is kind of automatic. So that's the downstairs brain. The upstairs is the one that does all the reasoning and all the thinking of other people and making the right decisions. So when the upstairs brain is functioning correctly, or is able to be functioning correctly, that's when we are able to have control of our emotions. We can think about what the consequences of our actions are. And we do that thing called thinking before we act. Again, not sure how many of you have ever said that to a child, but oh, why would you do that? Why didn't you think before you did it? And that's quite simply because they haven't got that upper part of their brain developed yet. When we're born, our downstairs part of our brain is absolutely fully developed, so that we can do the breathing and the, you know, the movement and the fight or flight should danger arise. So it's fully furnished downstairs. We're absolutely ready to go. But the upstairs, until about the age of 25, which is when that will fully mature, imagine that upstairs is just an open space. It's got construction tools everywhere. The roof isn't quite fully fitted, and there's patches of sky and everything. So that means that all of the behaviors that we want to see in our children and young people can physically not actually be there throughout their teenage years and much, much younger, because it doesn't fully develop in biology until they're 25. Some of them can start to function a lot better a lot sooner, and that isn't a personal choice. That isn't because they've made that choice of, well, actually, yeah, I think I want to be, you know, ahead of my peers or make life easier for mum, dad, or carers. It just is biology, and that is somewhere where we can actually give them a hand in terms of navigating that way between our downstairs and our upstairs. Okay, that's fine, Karen. We will make sure that you do get something of the sort. But yeah, thank you. Welcome along. So that basically is what's going on in the brain of young people at the time that they are growing up into, hopefully, these mature adults that we're expecting of them. So we will move into thinking about emotions. There's just a quote there from Aristotle. I don't need to read it out to you, but it is about getting the right emotion at the right time towards the right person in the right level or the right degree as well. And that's something that even as a grown-up, I don't feel like I'm very good at yet. So is it any wonder that our children and young people are still struggling with it? Okay. So when a child or young person is displaying a particular behavior, it is helpful to understand that what they're actually trying to do is communicate something. They may not even be sure what that message is or what they're trying to communicate, but as human beings, that's what we all do. We communicate things through our behaviors. We all have hidden needs from birth all the way through our lives. We will find ways to manage our emotions. Manage them in a way that means we are still feeling safe and protected. It's instinct. Now, we may not always be able to see what's going on inside. So if we have a child who is angry, these are some of the things that you may see. You may see them withdrawing or refusing or arguing or crying or ignoring or distracting or avoiding. Apologies for that. That skipped through far too quickly. So what's actually going on for them, and this is a bit like an iceberg model here, so you've got the anger displayed at the top, but actually what's going on for them down here may be a whole array of other things. So we'll keep continuing with the anger example. As I said, what you might see is some of these behaviors, so the slamming of the doors, the punching, the swearing, the shouting, the ignoring us. What goes through our mind is, you're rude, you're being obnoxious, you're being badly behaved. Am I a good enough parent? Is this my fault? What will other people think? But what if we changed or reframed our way of thinking and we brought in these questions instead? What is this behavior showing me? What is the anger protecting? Is my child or young person actually feeling sad, anxious, worried about something? If we look holistically at what else is going on for them, no idea why my slides are jumping through. Sorry, guys, probably trying to remind me that I'm being far too slow with all of this. Then it's worth thinking about, what else is happening for them, as well as, and this is the really important thing, what else is going on for you as the adult, as the adult? Why is it that last week you could cope with that same level of obnoxiousness, for example, but today or next week, that is a challenge. So we need to be more aware of what's happening for ourselves as well. Okay. The iceberg, actually, yeah, one of you guys has just mentioned that. And that's actually something in mental health that we use a lot, and it's not just for children and young people. All of us will be doing this, will be displaying one thing when actually it may be a defense mechanism for what's going on under here, so that those working with us or living with us or, on the bus don't realize that actually we're really scared or worried or anxious or not feeling very confident. So that is a really good model. I do like that one, and worth bearing in mind. Okay, so moving on to tools and techniques, and I guess, why we are all here. Yes, it is absolutely possible. I will try and get that to you, Fiona. But yeah, having a look at these slides, some of these images and things you may well want to keep hold of, and that's fine. We can facilitate that. It's not a problem. So externalizing the feeling and the behavior, instead of saying, stop being such a naughty so-and-so, if we change the sentence to, I understand that you're really angry, that looks like it's really frustrating, it allows the child to feel that it isn't them that is the problem, but actually the behavior. And that is really key. We want to kind of get that message across to you today, that it isn't all about our children and young people doing this to us. It's more about something that's happening for them. And once we've got that, again, we're not always going to be perfect and respond and react appropriately just because we have that understanding, but it does give us a bit more leeway and a little bit more chance of being empathic about what's happening for them, and hopefully growing that understanding. So if the sentence would normally be, I've told you to give me your iPad 15 times now, I'm having it, and you're not having it back for the rest of the week. If we changed it to something like, I can see that this really frustrates you. However, right now, we do have to go to grandma's house, as an example. I will take it from you now, and perhaps you can have extra time with it later, and so on and so forth. So you're separating the behavior from actually the child themselves. It's not okay for them to be angry and punch you or spit at you or any of the other things that go along with it. So I'm not advocating that you say that's okay, but using words of understanding may allow that young person a little bit more independence and a choice of, oh, actually, if I give this to you now, I can have it back later for an extra half an hour, if obviously that's conducive to what it is that you want at the end of the day. Okay, so when we are feeling overwhelmed or anxious or, completely out of our depth, what are some of the things that we can do? There's just a little slide to remind us that, pausing and breathing and resetting are key. But as I've already said, it is about acknowledging your own feelings. What is going on for you? Now, in the split second before you're about to go, no, that's possibly too late. We need to think about Sigal's model of flipping our lid. When we catch ourselves with our heart rate rising, our patience dropping, that's when we need to catch ourselves and go, okay, this is where I need to walk away. And don't get me wrong, guys, this takes practice. This is not easy. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and go, I have all this understanding, I have all this knowledge, and I'm going to be brilliant at this. We will still need to get into the mode of training ourselves and catching ourselves, even maybe when the child or young person is getting heightened themselves. And you then have a quick check-in with yourself and go, all right, where am I at on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is I'm completely relaxed and 10 is, yeah, I'm very close to flipping my lid. Where am I at? So you've already got that kind of scale of, right, what are my resources like today? I'm not sure what that second point on there is referring to, but once you've worked out where you're at, you'll be able to, as I said, gauge your resource level of, okay, is this something that I want to, you know, they say pick your battles. Is this something that I want to push today? Is it worth having that conversation now? And actually, what can I put on hold? If you've got to leave for grandma's house, then that's kind of got to be done. There's no getting out of that. But can they put their shoes on in 5 minutes time rather than right this minute? Do you maybe start to get prepared for going out of the house 5 or 10 minutes ahead, because you know that's always a battle? Now, I know some of these are very maybe small examples for those of us that are thinking, I can't actually get my child out of the bedroom, but they are small steps to kind of building that understanding and that trust. And that, for me, certainly has always been one of the biggest things, where if I feel like we're losing trust between myself, my husband, and the children, we go backwards 10 steps. So some of these things, you know, they may seem like trivial examples, but that's where we are building all of this up from. And yeah, bearing in mind that the behavior isn't about asking you or telling you that you're not good enough, or they're not taking this out on you, and it's not a personal thing. Yes, thank you, D. Bevan. Is it helpful for me to feel this right now rather than night? Yes, that's definitely confusing me. So is it helpful for me to feel this right now? You know, do I need to take myself away from this situation and think about what else is happening? Okay, so self-awareness in ourselves is key. I've made that point. We really do need to make sure we're able to gauge at least what's going on for ourselves. Usually some of the first things to go when we are under pressure is we don't sleep as well. We may rely on other things like, you know, not eating very well, or sleeping, not sleeping very well, staying up later to finish projects. If you have that self-awareness of what's going on for you, you can counteract that and go, right, the fundamentals still need to be put in place. I still need to eat well. I need to make sure I'm hydrated, try and get as much sleep as I can, and not lose all of those fundamental well-being tools for yourself. Thinking of feelings of safety. So this, for your child or young person, is conveyed through your body language and your tones, rather than just what you're saying. So you might be saying, it's okay, I can see that's really frustrating, but are you towering over them? Is your voice really tight and quite clipped? Because just like ourselves, children and young people can pick up on that tone of voice and body language and things that we're saying, or the rolling of the eyes, which we might do because, you know, this is the 100th time they've asked you for the new FIFA, for example. Funny how all of my examples revolve around football. I do apologize. I know there are other battles in life as well. It's just that's where my experience is. And self-regulating. So as I've already said, you know, getting a handle on where you're at and putting things into place. Because at the end of the day, we're modeling to our children how it is that we cope in overwhelming situations. And that's what we want them to learn. Remember, they're upstairs. Their kind of rational thinking brain isn't fully formed yet. So they want to see that in us, that this is how we deal with it. Road rage is a great example. I've never been very good at it. And I have a 16-year-old who will start driving next year. I'm thinking, oh no, is it too late? No, it's never too late. So that's helping me to be much, much calmer on the road, because he will then model what he's just seen for the last 16, 17 years. But yeah, that emotional regulation is important for us as well as the young people. So, if you are faced with a situation where they are behaving in a way that, seems a bit out of character, or that they are, escalating their emotions, you're going to take on being a feelings detective. So watching them, what is it that they're doing, and what do we think, is going on for them? What might their behavior be telling you? Could they be scared? Could they be worried about something? Are they calm? Are they kind of quite hyper, or are they completely flat? And at the end of the day, as I said, check in with yourself as well. Children need our help to be able to process their emotional responses, because we're the ones to teach it to them. So it's really key that we start getting it right for ourselves. If all you take away from today's webinar is, I need to learn to self-regulate, then that is a step in the right direction. Okay. So naming and recognizing any experience, these are just some conversation starters, or words that, you may wish to start using. Obviously, you will have your own language, and the way that you speak to your child is going to be very personal, but just some of the ways that take the kind of blame game out of it are our words. So that must be really hard. And I'm sorry that, limited screen time is making you feel that way, might be angry, or, going into school or starting a new school year is making you feel anxious. Just giving that, whatever is going on for your child, recognition can be half of the battle. That's right, Fiona. I will keep talking about this one while I just go back to this one for one of our participants today, guys. So giving your child that validity of actually what you're feeling is just as valid as what I might be feeling, or another human being feels. Sometimes to do things like rush them into the car, or right, that's bedtime, let's go, it can feel a little bit kind of, well, is that what happens to us? No, we tend to go, right, I know I'm going up at 10, I've probably got just enough time for another episode of this, and so on and so forth. So allow that conversation and those words of validity to happen for you guys. Sorry, Fiona, I am going to move on. But like I said, I will try and get these to you anyway. So, these are just some examples. I won't read all of them out to you. You're perfectly capable of reading the slide to yourself. But being heard and listened to is really, really key. If you ever can put yourself in a situation where you're at work maybe, or a friend or a partner has completely just swept over what you wanted to say or needed to get out, that is not a great feeling. We all feel a little bit, I'm sure we have all managed to feel a little bit ignored at some point or other, and it's just not a nice way to feel. And if it's your nearest and dearest that are making you feel invalid or unheard, then that can be really damaging for our self-esteem and confidence, as well as any relationship that we're trying to build. Okay, so here are some examples of some behaviors that you may see and be thinking, okay, what else is it that could be going on for them? What is that behavior trying to tell me? It could be any of these examples: refusing to go to bed. Do they need more family time? Or refusing to go to bed because are they anxious about something at school or college the following day, or just generally anxious about school and college, or a work placement that they've got? It can be something, straightforward, like, oh, I can help us with more family time, but it could be something bigger that actually we don't have a lot of control over. But talking to them allows them to express, oh, okay, you can't do anything about it, however, you're listening to me, and that allows me to have those feelings and makes me feel like I'm not silly for having them, or that I need to keep them hidden. So as you can see, there are some other examples there: not wanting to go to school, maybe something happened at school, maybe it's a theme, a particular day that this always happens on, Wednesdays, maybe it's PE day. So it's just trying to be a bit more mindful of, actually, these are little people and there could be lots of things going on for them, just again, as there can be for us as well. And you always need to keep that in the back of your mind, what's going on for you. Okay. Not going to spend too long on this slide at all, actually, because there are some more strategies that I would much rather we focused on, but that concept of how is it that we can ensure that, as well as trust, this is a loving relationship. So you don't have to, you know, always give in and have no boundaries at all. This is very much about building a parent and child or children relationship that is actually sustainable and helpful to their growth, rather than, oh, well, they just get away with everything. That isn't what we're advocating at all. So, you know, having clear expectations and sticking to those boundaries. But then if they push those boundaries, the outcome of that isn't something that isn't unreasonable. Okay, yes, I can try and do that, Natalie. So when does it become, you know, an unreasonable expectation, so that you can actually go, well, I'm talking about consequences. So if they push the boundaries too far, what is it that we do? Do we then call it a punishment, a consequence? Or do we go, well, actually, that isn't acceptable, so we need to think of a way around that? Do we need to move the boundary? Do we need to negotiate or renegotiate it so that it's something you can maintain, both for you and the children as well? Show how to make amends. I don't know, I won't ask for a show of hands, but how many of us do apologize to our children if, you know, something has gone wrong, or if we have been too quick to jump to a conclusion or hollered at them? You know, these things happen, but we would expect that from them. So is it an equal relationship as it can be? You know, do we model all of the things that we're expecting our children to do? Because otherwise it's a bit like learning to drive. You do it while the instructor's watching. So I have to apologize for wrongdoing as a child, but as a grown-up, oh, I don't have to do that. I don't have to check my rear view mirror, for example. So let's try and be a little bit more on an equal footing. And again, I'm not advocating that they get away with everything and anything and there are no boundaries. But do we model the same behavior in ourselves to our children that we want to see in them? Okay, I'm going to skip over that one because some of these, as time gets away from us, may be more tangible and more practical things that I know you can take away with you today. So movement, and lots of you did say primary age children, and I know there are some older ones here as well. But movement doesn't just have to be, as you can see in this image, hula hooping or, you know, splashing around in some water. You know, movement can be going on a bike ride together or on a walk, rather than just saving that yearly walk for doing it on, I don't know, Christmas morning or Boxing Day. Is that something that can be planned into a week, so that maybe every Sunday we all do a family walk together, or something along those lines, or a bike ride if that's something, you know, that interests yourselves and your young people as well. Exercising together, you know, whether it's dancing or running, swimming. Somebody mentioned swimming earlier as well. You know, as old as they get slightly older, I know they don't want to hang out with us as much, but is that something that you could get into competitively, for example? With younger children, there are so many different websites out there, and there's some on the next slide, some YouTube clips and things where you can just do things like musical statues, but actually we are warming up or cooling down a different part of our body. There's something called, it's a yoga one. It's not going to come to me right now because obviously I need it right here, but there is a great set of YouTube videos, and this is for much younger children, so I'm talking, you know, primary, no older than that, where it's literally different yoga routines to things like Star Wars or Toy Story. So they're really good fun as well. But movement as we all know, is really good for us as human beings. Anyway, cosmic yoga, yes, thank you so much, Marie. So yeah, cosmic yoga is a really good one, and all free resources as well. But getting that movement in, guys, isn't just about our children and young people. That's great for us as well. So, you know, I haven't asked about jobs that you guys are in or professions at the minute, but how many of us are now sitting at a desk constantly or not moving as much as we would like to, or did, you know, in our younger days. So that I'm a big believer in getting some movement in. So there are, as I said, just some different ideas here that you can use. And, you know, a bit of neuroscience, who doesn't love that? We all know that that can help. You know, well-being up here is good for our body down here, and our body being well is great for our minds and our well-being as well. Noodle, Go Noodle on YouTube. Childline Calm Zone has some yoga videos and calming strategies too. Thank you, guys. You're a wealth of knowledge and resource here today, so thank you for that. Play is the next one, as well as movement. And again, those of you with secondary age children or older are going to go, play with my child. We don't do dolls and houses and, you know, building in the sand anymore. But actually that joyous interaction, that kind of attitude of making things fun, we still have, you know, it started in the pandemic first lockdown, but we still have those evening kind of chats of, okay, what's your food love and your food hate? What are 5 things that, you know, completely outrageous that you want to do before you're 30? All these kinds of things. What was the best part of your day today? It's just introducing a little bit more fun and play, and that kind of attitude of our interactions don't always have to be, can you do this? Could you get that done? You know, that kind of, or can you bring down your washing? And just changing some of that around. But for younger children, you know, getting a bouncy ball and just bouncing that in between the two of you sat on the floor cross-legged, or getting some clay out or Play-Doh, depending on how, what's the word, courageous you're feeling. Just drawing together even. And if your child or young person is a bit more creative, you know, can you sit down and write an acronym for something? Maybe an acronym for anger. So they're actually getting some of their feelings down in a more creative way. As I say, it isn't just about play in the traditional sense. Got lots of things happening in chat. Talking spoon, the person with a spoon can express how they feel. That is a fabulous idea. Cooking a meal together, yes. And, you know, some of these things came about in lockdown, and then as the world tried to go back to normal, some of them fell by the wayside, which is a real shame. But yeah, thank you for that, guys. Breathing is a key one. I knew it was going to jump forward. And again, for us as adults, this is really key as well. We quite often will sit hunched up on a sofa or a settee of an evening. You know, it might be at the desk, whatever we're doing during the day, we're not getting enough breath in. So some of these are really good, you know, and there are lots of videos that will help you with that. A really great one that I love is called box breathing. And you can do it with a 19-year-old and you can do it with a 4-year-old, as long as they can draw, or they can visualize, or they can look at a window. So you would breathe in for the frame of the top of the window, then you hold it as you come down the side, and then you blow out for the bottom, and then you have empty lungs as you go back up to the top again. So you breathe in, hold, breathe out, empty lungs as you go back to the top. That's great because you can just doodle it in a notebook and nobody around you knows that you're doing it. So young people can be utilizing techniques like that all of the time. And meditation is great as well, yes, and making up a story together to help with that meditation, I guess, as well, really key. Mindfulness, possibly my favorite. Not one that I will spend a really long time on, but there are lots of mindfulness techniques. Mindfulness is not the same as meditation. They can be kind of interchanged for people, but mindfulness is about being present in the moment. So for example, brushing your teeth. While you are brushing your teeth for that 2 minutes, can you think about the sensations of where that brush is going, which part of the mouth is in? Can you actually taste the toothpaste? If it's an electric toothbrush, that noise and the vibration of it, how is that feeling? Which parts of your face can you feel it in? It isn't about getting kind of cross-legged. Yes, we can have this chat saved. Absolutely, definitely, I would do that. We can, you know, sit and do some meditation as well, but that sometimes requires a lot more practice and a lot more patience. Mindfulness is a really great one. Just eating a raisin mindfully, put it in your mouth, don't start chewing it, hold on to it. Can you feel all the different sensations? Can you feel saliva filling your mouth, and so on and so forth? There are some really short, sharp techniques that as adults too, there is no way I could come on here today and just say that all of this is for children and young people. If we get it right, it definitely filters and cascades down to our children and young people, because they see that it works and they want some of that as well. So if you can do these things together, great. If your relationship is not there yet in terms of doing this with the children and young people, try it out for yourself. And then the bits that work are the ones that you want to talk to your children and young people about. Okay, so where can you get further help? Those of you that have children and young people with teachers still, speaking to their teachers, they may well have, you know, strategies within school or programs within school that you're not aware of because they've not been advocated widely enough, or they mentioned it, you know, before your family joined that school, or so on and so forth. Other family members, and not necessarily just the ones that have children, but even those that, you know, you may think have no idea at all, they can sometimes have a perspective that is a little bit distanced from yourself as the parent. And it can be really quite liberating to have all these different ideas. United is a brand new service. Yes, thank you, Fiona. And they can also be reached out to. So that's United. Fiona's put that in the chat so you can see the spelling of that. GPs, they're a great port of call. I know things have been difficult in the pandemic with getting appointments and wanting to do assessments on the phone and things like that, but I do believe things are getting slightly more back to normal. So, you know, there are, as Fiona's mentioned, young people services like United as well. And over 17, if your child or young person is over 17, they can self-refer. So that's a really good resource there as well. So online resources, you will hopefully have heard of lots of these. So Anna Freud, Young Minds, and Mind Ed as well. Yeah, definitely can have a think about getting these slides out to you. I'm just, the reason I'm not promising that 100% is because if we don't have your email address, then it's going to be quite tricky to get it back to you. But hopefully when you signed up, that's what you were asked for. And then, yes, this can come out to you guys. Something in the chat, which I'm just going to quickly check. Yes, slides will come out to you as long as we have your email address, guys. It will be there. Okay, so feedback wise, because believe it or not, made it to the end. I only skipped a couple of slides, but they are in the pack when they come to you. Any feedback you can give us either now or post the course, because we will send you an evaluation link, would be really useful, guys. This is the first of 6 parent webinars, I believe, that we're running throughout this academic year. So look out for the others, but the others haven't been written. So off the back of your feedback, we will obviously ensure that the following webinars are far more you know, tailored to what it is that you guys have asked for. We couldn't reach out to you prior to this one because we didn't know who wanted that training. So it will be there, the evaluation link for you. Please be as honest as you can and tell us what more you would like to see more of. Is there something else that we could have covered today or you would like covered moving forward. As I've said already, give the tools a bit of a go. Have a think. I'm just going to stop the recording for a second.